for joining us today. My name is Amita Jane. I'm the founder and CEO of Readability. And today we're going to be talking about the factors that determine when your child is physically ready to read. And to help us understand what those factors are, I've invited Dr. Bernice Ross to share her expertise in this area. Welcome, Bernice.
Thank you, Amita. I'm delighted to be here. And reading is something that I've been passionate about since I've been in my teens.
Oh, me too. And we couldn't be speaking. I'm so honored to be speaking with you today. So, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
I am a professor emeritus of psychology, but when I first started teaching, when I was doing my student teaching, when I was 20 years old, I worked with a woman by the name of Loretta Newman, and I learned how to teach adults who had reading problems how to read. Loretta had specialized that, and this was um, way back in the last century, but she had been working in this area probably since the 1950s. So I was really blessed to work with this woman who had dedicated her entire life to reading, but who had also worked with Grace Fernald, who the Fernald School at UCLA is named for her, and they specialize with kids that have learning disabilities. I did some graduate work at the Fernald School, but the point is that one of the best ways for kids that are having reading problems is to use an approach that's called see it, say it, and write it, because that taps into visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and what the child is learning. And the thing I love about readability is it gets into all of this. I love your tool so much. It does see it, say it, write it with today's technologies. And I think it's one of the things I'm so excited about the work you're doing, Amita. I mean, it just
Oh,
makes my heart sing after being in the field for over 40 years.
oh, thank you, Bernice. Thank you. And I remember having a fascinating conversation with you about when a child is ready to learn to read. And I thought, well, we have to share this with our audience here at Readability so that they also can share in that knowledge. So let's get right into it. Tell us, what is the first component a parent should look for to determine whether their child is on their way to learning to read?
Well, number one is, do they know their left from their right and up from down? And it seems pretty simplistic, but if you think about B, P, and D, we understand. But there's another component most people don't know about, Amita. And this is that your eyes, when they see something, they flip it, the retina, it's flipped upside down and backwards on the retina. So one of the reasons young children will write their S's backwards is that that's the way it is actually appearing to their brain, but they have to train their brain to flip it around. So the children who may not be ready to read, or who have reading problems because they're not strong visuals, or their brains are wired a little bit differently, those those children, well, it may go beyond that left and right and up and down, but they have to have that component first. And as a parent, you need to understand that if their brain's not flipping this back around, then it's a problem.
Mm.
And again, the kinesthetics are the ones that have, those are the people that learn best by touch. That's about 20% of the population, versus those of us who are visual, 40%, auditory is 40%. But if your child is a kinesthetic, it's really important that you have them trace out letters when they're first learning, because they can learn. That goes into the kinesthetic portions of the brain, versus auditory lobes, occipital lobes for vision. So you have, again, what your tool does is you're sending that information to three different parts of their brain, which strengthens their ability to start learning letters and seeing words.
Oh, that is so fascinating. I didn't realize that learning, um, I mean, we know that learning is different for everyone, but I didn't know the breakdown that it's 40% auditory, 40% visual, and 20% kinesthetics. That's really interesting. And you have an incredible story using the Marsden Ball method. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Well, there are a lot of different ways to use this, and you fast forward here to to today. And I just watched a video just before we got on with a woman who was coaching, who was helping kids improve their ability to hit a ball. But it
Mhm.
was the Marston ball. And it was so funny to see that here at this moment in time for something I learned about. But what Loretta Newman had children do is she would have them track different numbers or different letters depending on the kind of Marston ball. And she might have it swing and ask them to spell a word like red. And there would be an R and an E and a D, but they'd have to be able to see where it is. Or this woman who was training kids to hit the ball better. But what they would do is they had to tap a letter with, they had a stick that was, pretty wide, red mark in the center, and then blue on each end. You had to tap into the letter and hit it, and she could see if they were tapping the ball at the right spot or not. So that's, that gives you some notion of their eye-hand coordination. But again, if your eyes and
Mhm.
hands aren't coordinated, chances are you're going to have trouble reading, because it's, again, taking the big muscles and then strengthening those. There's 6 pairs of muscles in each eye. And what happens with your development, if you think about babies, they've got very large heads,
Yes.
compared to the rest of their body. So your development proceeds through this, from head to toe, and then from center to outside. So if you haven't developed, if your child is really awkward and they have trouble, they're not, they're having trouble doing, maybe some kids that are the same age that they are, but are doing it earlier. It just may be that your child's development in this area is, not proceeding as quickly. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's very common for little boys to be 7 or 8 years old and still not have that fine muscle coordination. And they get labeled as stupid or slow. And it's not anything to do with their brain or their capacity. It's just that their body was not physically ready to do this. And if they walk late or talk late, those may be indicators too. It varies because everybody's different.
You also hit on a really important point that some of the other reading specialists and educational specialists have talked about, which is play. And when you talk about the Marks and Ball, there's an element of play in there that enhances that learning. And so I love that. I love that.
Well, one of the best things that you can do with your child is to make it fun. And if they're having problems, this idea of hitting a ball and playing a game with it, that's something that you can have a lot of fun with. But again, just pitching a ball to a kid and see if they can hit it, where they're hitting it with a baseball bat, or
Mhm.
it can be a racket or whatever you choose to do, but you're looking for that coordination.
I love it. So we've got the up, down, right, left. We've got muscle development. And what is the third component to knowing if your child is ready to read?
Well, it's to see it, say it, write it
See
for
it, say it,
me.
write it.
And the kids, and one of the ways you can start judging how your child's brain is wired. With adults, I like to give them a word to spell. And if you ask me how to, say spell anonymous, you're going to see me look right up like that because I'm a strong visual. So, and that means what I'm doing is I'm accessing my visual memory. So that's my strength. And then someone who's auditory, my husband's very strong auditory. And these people as adults, they have kind of radio voices, but when they spell a word, they're going, or they answer a question where they're accessing their auditory memory, their eyes stay at their ear level. They don't move around. I'm looking up.
I'm
And
looking
then,
up too.
yeah, so we're visuals, but
Yes.
also I have a strong kinesthetic component. And what happens to me is when I'm processing stuff, a lot of times I'll look down like this, which means I'm going into my kinesthetic memory. So again, we all have these different components. It's just one may be stronger than the other. And to the extent that you can help your child with, a child who is strong on auditory can learn A-E-I-O-U, no problem. And then I remember Loretta taught, adults this. Bad red is not up. And that's the short vowels, bad, ed,
Mhm.
is, not up, up. So again, the the auditory children have no trouble learning this, but again, it may be harder for someone who's kinesthetic or visual. I look at a word, I recall what it looks like. The auditory person is going to, they're going to be able to, they can hear it or they'll be able to sound it out in many cases. But then the kinesthetic kid, those children have the hardest time. And what I would suggest to do if your child is kinesthetic, tie things together with it, something in their environment. So like red, okay, yeah. Okay, so but maybe you have a card that's got, they know the color red, have them point to something with that vowel in it. So what you're doing is you're having them engage in a physical reaction as opposed to just trying to recall it. You have them do something physical because that anchors that in their body. And then their thinking process is, oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, that was the color red. Yeah.
That is really powerful, Bernice. That is really good stuff. And I know it's going to help our parents out there that are listening today. I love that. I love that so much. So, so we've got muscle development, we've got visual up, down, right, left, and then we have the read, see, write, and read, right? What was that
It's
again?
see it, say it, and write it.
See
So
it, say it,
ideal,
and write
if
it.
your child is, and especially if they're having trouble learning to spell, you want to have them look at the word, see it, say it out loud, and then write it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's really informative stuff. And Bernice, I know that you are working on something really special. Do you mind sharing your latest project with all of us?
We have a new book that's just been released called Lead Great Virtual Meetings, The Steps You Need to Succeed. And my husband was in this space leading virtual meetings back in the 1990s when I met him, and he was working, he was doing project team leadership and these other projects where he was working with senior leaders, but he was teaching them to lead teleconferences. And the thing that's so ironic today, as we sit here in a Zoom meeting, there are two things that you need to know about, what matters when you are leading a, virtual meeting. Number one, you need to have a leadership model, which is what our book addresses. That's our, we have a real basic model that started with the conference call. We did a book on it back in 2011. We've updated it for today's platforms with all the crazy things that are going on with Zoom and these other learning platforms. And we're really excited about this book and where it's going to help a lot of people. It's super passion of ours.
Anything you do is just phenomenal. So I can't wait to dive deep into your book. And with parents working from home and doing Zoom meetings, I'm sure they'll look into it as well. Thank you, Bernice. Thank you for your insights and your expertise today and for joining us. Really appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me here, Amita. And again, I can't say enough good things about readability.
Thank you. Thank you. That means the world to me.